Hi, I'm Board Game Influencer Guy. You might know me from certain videos like 10 games you absolutely must back on Kickstarter this month and 20 games I got rid of last year after telling you to buy them. Come, look at my collection. So we're going to take a walk around my collection and I'm going to show it off to you. I'm going to show off just how extensive it is, how many games I have, how many games I have that you want. And the reason for that is I'm here to make you feel inadequate. Because if you're feeling inadequate, you're going to buy more games. And that's what it's all about. Now that opening segment was of course an exaggeration, but there is an awful lot of pressure out there in the world to buy more games. A lot of content is geared around what's new on Kickstarter, what can you buy now, what's the amazing new hotness. There's Facebook groups and other places where it's all about what game should I pick up next. People will put up pictures of, reasonably big collections and go, what am I missing? And I'm looking at 200 games going, yeah, that is a heap of games you've got there. You're really not missing much. But every time they do that, someone will post like a laundry list of things that apparently this massive games collection is missing. And it's all started to boggle me because I'm just wondering where people get the time. I am a professional board game reviewer. This is my job. I have a big board game collection because that's part of my job. And I play a lot of games because that's part of my job. And if it wasn't part of my job, I simply wouldn't have the number of games I do. I wouldn't be able to get to them. I wouldn't be able to justify owning so many games that I had not played. And ultimately, the purpose of board games is to play them. So what's the point of acquiring a bunch of games you're not going to play? That always struck me as a little odd. So I've had a bit of a think about that, and I'm going to talk about ways you can manage this kind of pressure. If you want to play a whole bunch of games, that's cool. You don't necessarily need to own all the games you want to play. There are ways and means you can play and experience a whole bunch of games without having to buy them all and keep them all on your shelves. If you just want a game for 1 to 3 plays, you don't necessarily need to own that game for all time. And that, esteemed viewers, is the focus of this video. How to have a great time and play a lot of games without necessarily breaking the bank. First off, I want to bring up a concept of mine called the formula. And the formula is this idea I have about managing a board game collection. And it works a little like this. Take the total number of games in your collection. Absolutely everything you've got, every single game you own, put that number to one side. Then figure out how many game sessions you have per week and how many games you get through in that time. And be honest about this. If you have a weekly session and people only turn up half the time, well, that's 0.5 of a session. And if you only manage to make it through one game that time, well, that scores a 0.5. Now, if your group meets every week without fail, you have a long session, you always play like 5 games, well, that would score 5 points here. And be honest about it. Don't think of an idealized situation where everyone turns up all the time. Think about how many games you truly get to play. All right, now take the total number of games you've got, then get the number of sessions you've got and the amount of games you get through, and divide your total number of games by that. Then divide that number by 52. Now I'm going to put all that up in a formula here, so you should be able to see what I'm talking about. Total number of games divided by number of sessions plus average games played divided by 52. And that should get you a number. Now if that number is over 1, that is how many years it will take you to play your collection once. So yeah, if you have 50 games and you play 2 games a week, it's going to take you 6 months to get through that collection. Now, if that collection balloons up to 500 games, it's now going to take you 5 years to get through that collection. Now, this is a little thing I like to keep in mind for how big is a manageable collection to you. If you are going to get 300 odd games and you only game once a week, it's going to take you a while to get through those things. If you're playing like 5 nights a week and you're knocking out 3 games, you're playing 15, 20 games a week, awesome to you. You can sustain a collection that's much larger. But not a lot of people are actually playing that many games. I mean, I'm not, and it's my job. And of course, having one of these really big collections costs a lot of money. And if you don't necessarily have the money to spend, or you actually want to spend the money on something else, but you still want to have the experiences, how do you go about playing that many games without breaking the bank? Well, that's pretty straightforward. There's heaps of ways for you to have all those experiences without spending as much money. The first of which is board game cafes. If there's a board game cafe in your area, try out the game there. If it's one you really love, consider buying it. But you don't have to buy the game to try the game if you're at a board game cafe. You can borrow games off people. If you have a group of friends who also play games, they might have some games that they own that you don't. You don't have to be the only person in your community buying games. Other people can share the load and you can share games around. I know a lot of the games I've reviewed on the channel, things like Seven Wonders and Mage Knight, I didn't own those games. Those games were borrowed from friends of mine. And I've returned those games to those people and no longer have them. They're great games. Seven Wonders in particular, I really like. But my friend owns it. If I ever want to play Seven Wonders, I can just either borrow it off him or play it with him. And then there's Board Game Arena, Tabletop Simulator, and other platforms where you can try out a game digitally before you buy it. If you really just want to experience a game and learn it and just play it once or twice, playing it on a place like Tabletop Simulator, that's a great way to go about it, because you're not spending money on something you're only going to play once or twice and then lop on a shelf and forget about. But I think the real issue here, and the one I'm skirting around a little bit, is the pressure, the peer pressure out there to acquire more games. So much of our discourse and dialogue is about acquisition. And if you're finding yourself pressured or suffering from fear of missing out over a board game, maybe go, is this a healthy way to be doing things? Because ultimately board games should be fun. They shouldn't be causing anxiety. Having a big shelf of unplayed games that's making you anxious is not a good thing. So perhaps consider turning down the noise in your life. Consider not looking at what the new Kickstarters are when you're waiting for a bunch to turn up already. Consider leaving some of those Facebook groups where the message is always, buy this, buy that, get the new hotness. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm missing out on this new hot Kickstarter. Be critical of the board game media you consume. If a channel is constantly telling you, this is the greatest thing ever, you need to get it, they're just helping sell you a product, and it's not necessarily a product you want or actually need. Because the sad and ridiculous truth about board games is most of them can be played over and over and over again. But the focus in board game media and board game discussion just keeps falling back on what's the new thing, what's new and cool, what's the new hot game to play. And if you're comfortable with owning a crap load of games and buying and acquiring new games is your jam, I'm not judging you here. This video isn't a judgmental one. It's one where I'm kind of reaching out to the people who are feeling a bit of pressure, who are maybe sitting there going, oh, I've got 60 games on my unplayed shelf and I've got 20 more Kickstarters coming. That it's okay to just sort of pull the plug on this activity. And it's okay to go, I'm happy with what I have. I have a great collection now, I've got a bunch more games coming in, maybe I should play those more. Maybe I should do one of those 10 by 10 challenges where I pick 10 games I like and I play them 10 times, instead of, buying a new game in the interim. Because the true charm of board gaming is not that they're novelties to be discovered, played once and discarded, it's that they can be played over and over again. You can play 100 games of Terraforming Mars, you can play 100 games of Ark Nova, hell, you can play 100 games of Uno. You might not necessarily need new and wonderful experiences every week when you've got on your shelves a bunch of great experiences just waiting to happen. So to finish this video off, I thought for the thousands of videos out there telling you to buy something, for the thousands of messages that say, this is a new thing, you should go get it, there should be one video that says, don't. Don't buy the thing. Don't get the new thing. Try the old thing. Experience what you already have. Acquiring pretty boxes that you put on a shelf and do nothing with is not the way to happiness. And I just thought someone should finally sit down and say that. And if you enjoyed this video, come support us on Patreon, hit the notification button, like, share, and subscribe to the channel.